Hey, this is Andy Revkin, longtime science journalist, mostly at the New York Times, 35 years of poking at big problems and questions in this period of world history that's like no other. And it's really great to reconnect with a couple of people I met through a whale that has really still almost maybe been seen, but really is just conceptualized through data. And I wrote about this in the New York Times twice, two stories in 1 week about this call that was resonating, had been recorded by these Cold War era microphones, and it seemed to indicate there was a whale that was out there alone, calling with no response. Apparently, this caught the attention of Josh Zeman, a longtime filmmaker, and you'll hear about this more in a second, and Adrian Grenier, who's an actor and producer and so many more things, an environmentalist. It's good to connect with you. I just saw the film, and it's great to see have this conversation for those who helped to support it in the early stages. Maybe Josh, you could just start about that. Just talk a little bit about that first moment. It's in the film, but
Yeah.
when this caught your attention and take us forward to where we are now.
Um, I I read your article, and as I said it, and I still remember it was really a gut punch, and it was so fascinating to me because I spoke to other people about this whale, and I was really fascinated. I'm a storyteller, and I've pitched a lot of stories, but there was something about this story that really resonated with people, and that was the initial spark. Like, what was it? Was it our own existential crisis? Obviously through loneliness, like that's there, but now it was projected onto a whale, and that just added so much more. Is it the fact that whales are so big and we're so humble? Is it the fact that whales are almost human-like, or they're spiritual, or they're out in the middle of this great huge void, the ocean? And that just made that loneliness idea so much more. And so it was really an attempt to kind of get to the nugget of that human emotion. But then I found so much cool science from that. Went to Adrian, who was also at the time, I think Adrian starting your kind of ocean stewardship environmental journey. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course I remember that. Very momentous moment for me. I get pitched a lot of films as an actor, producer, and I'm used to saying no. But when I heard this story of the loneliest whale, like Josh was saying, it's as if time stopped. I was in the great abyss of the expanse of the ocean, and this whale just sang right to my heart, right to my spirit, and it was a yes. It was a resounding yes. I want to be a part of this journey. I want to tell this story. I want to get to know this whale, and yeah, there's just something so unique and powerful about this character, this creature, this whale that is about connection, communication, about the human condition. And I'm just in love with the whale and the film and the story, and I'm really proud of this.
And the other element I think that captures people is the sense there are still mysteries on this planet, and a big chunk of them are in the oceans. As many have said, we know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the depths of the sea. They just Bill Broad, one of my colleagues at the Times a few years ago, wrote about this massive fish. There's this one variety of fish that lives like in that middle zone, not the deep sea and not at the top. That's like the most populous creature on the planet. No one knew it was there until just like 10 years ago. So it's like that gets to me too. And I think it's conveyed in the film too. And you pull together scientists too. A lot of scientists are reluctant to sort of be featured in a storytelling project. There are some who like that, but was it a struggle to get people back out to look for this beast?
Well, I think I was a layman coming in, and so kind of with this idea that, what would it take to go find this whale? And, a couple people, scientists laughed me out of the room, originally. But, there was also something very genuine about the story that I think connected to them. And it was a challenge. It was a real challenge. It's like, oh my God, this is the craziest thing in the world. And it was almost like a heist movie. Like, let's get, the best in the world out there and let's see if we can pull this off. And I think they were inspired. And even they were inspired by kind of all the people, even from Kickstarter. Like, it's one thing for scientists to go out and to prove a theory. It's another thing when there's all these people behind you, like, wanting to find this thing. And I think they got caught up in that same emotion.
It's kind of another form of citizen science. There's citizen science where the citizens go out and collect butterfly data, but here citizens are supporting a scientific enterprise, and that must feel encouraging, Adrian.
Well, also, what I noticed is, there's something about this whale that brings out the humanity in people, and often scientists are, quite analytic, and they're very technical, and this gave them an opportunity to, operate from a different headspace, where it was not just about what could be done, but like what was technically possible, but what was, possible in terms of, the imagination and what, it's like you just to see these guys light up. Usually, scientists are talking about facts and figures and data, and like to see these guys light up, their hearts light up.
Yeah.
And it was visible. I mean, they were excited, ecstatic, emotive, and that's a beautiful thing to watch. I mean, good job, Josh, in being able to bring out the best in all of the characters in the film.
And one thing you've done with this film also is you've shown one of the more remarkable stories that hides behind so many of the headlines we look at on how devastated nature is. Blue whales, and in that case, in the Pacific, fin whales are actually resurgent. There's a wonderful image. For those who haven't seen it yet, I don't want to spoil things, but there's an image of abundance around blue whales that's just breathtaking. And this whale is somewhere in the middle. The hybrid notion comes forward pretty clearly as probably what we're looking at here. But it's that back picture. You have that, but you also have peril. The chunk of the film on the noise pollution issue is enormously impactful. And because blue whales are coming back, that means they're getting in harm's way with ships more. So that what's refreshing about it is you're not putting that necessarily in the foreground, but it's really a big part of the atmosphere of the film. How does that relate? Maybe Adrian, you're pushing really hard on ocean conservation and restoration. Has there been too much woe is me, or how do you balance those elements?
Well, I think the theme of vibration and sound communication is big in the film, and of course we can't escape the theme of noise, just the endless amounts of ocean noise pollution that humans put out there through commercial shipping and sonar blasts. I mean, we test weapons in the ocean and create seismic blasts, oil exploration. All of these things are creating this cacophony of noise, and it's something that we aren't aware of, but it disturbs the fish populations and whales who really rely on the sounds of the ocean and the ability to hear and use echolocation to navigate the deep dark depths. They go so low, there's no light, so deep that they can't see, so they use the sound. And so we really are disturbing life under the water, and that's something that we discovered. I learned more about. But if we're talking about whales, and they're very highly social, very sentient, and want to connect with one another, and they use sound to do that, and we're disturbing that, it's harder and harder for animals to connect and it disturbs their mating patterns. So talk about lonely. Like if you're out there trying to communicate and there's a bunch of noise, like being at a party, like you as humans, you go to a party and it's really loud and there's someone you really want to connect to, maybe somebody that strikes your fancy, and you're like, what? I can't even, let's go outside. You say, let's go outside and talk. Whales can't do that. And so, it's a very important theme within the film, of course.
And Josh, it's arguably, maybe it's demonstrably true that you've elicited or facilitated some new science here that might not have happened otherwise. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it was very interesting, and that we were able, finding science is really interesting. You know, you have your theorems, you can prove them, but there was a lot of different little victories that we had, and whether it was using a drone and and a sonar to basically connect a picture and recording a whale for the first time, we know that whale is calling out, that's interesting. But of course there's the hybrid. There have been documented hybrids before, but now we're adding in another dimension, which is sound. And the fact that hybrids are making this call, it's weirdly so logical. It's like, oh, there's a hybrid whale. Oh, there's another hybrid whale. There's two, and maybe there's many, many more. We just weren't listening, and that becomes a theme for the film about listening, but you can't listen because there's ocean noise pollution. And it's just so interesting that there was this one whale, 52, that was calling out in the middle of the ocean, and of course the Navy hears it, and he's calling out so loud, and that makes us pay attention. And then we go and look, and then we find more. I mean, it's not illogical, but at the end of the day, yes, that is science. And now, John Hildebrand is, putting together a paper. We have the DNA that was done, and we can really start sequencing and looking at how these whale populations, now that they're resurging, are coming back in and mixing.
So this was a pretty small research vessel too. It must have been an interesting challenge just shooting. I noticed at least one of the scientists had an anti-nausea patch under her ear.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how that went too, when you're trying to film and you're bouncing around, and especially on the Zodiac, the high-speed vessel, when they were doing that Ahab stuff, it looked pretty amazing. So how did that all go?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Creatively, we wanted to almost create like an action film in some respects. And it's just amazing to see these guys, the synchronization, John Kolomakidis telling the other guy, okay, I'm going to go, and then putting the tag on. It's fascinating stuff, but it was a bit of a ragtag mission. Adrian was like, oh, let's get IMAX. And we tried to get like IMAX and do like a huge thing. But at the end of the day, it was really, bring it back to the Kickstarter people, it was really like, having this tiny little budget and going do it very indie style. There were like 5 crew members, 5 filmmakers on board with like 22 scientists all cramped in this little space. And so it was intimate, but it also really gave us this kind of fly on the wall look at the science. And we were all together. John Kolomakidis would be like, grab this and do this for me, please. So we really got to be all together, and I think that really showed in the film, these guys trying to go out and do this. The other cool thing was they had never done this before. They had never tried to find a whale via sound in the ocean. They were using antiquated Navy sonobuoys. They were using these little tags, and it was really interesting. They're like, I don't know if this is going to work. We tried it once, or like we basically had the idea to try it once, but this was the first time to do it. And I think because it wasn't one of these large scale Nat Geo style expeditions where everything's very documented, they felt free to kind of go out there and try it, and that created science. And that was really interesting for me as a filmmaker to capture and then understand the effect that we were having.
Well, I think you capture something that's really important about storytelling going forward in this century. We kind of grew up with stories being neat and clean and being greenlit as a project with an outcome. And this goes for science too, and for journalism as well. When you think about addressing climate change at scale, you think about conserving and restoring the ocean to its somewhere near its historic capacity for life. These are really wicked stories full of unknowns, and the only approach that's actually reflective of that is exploratory, not expository. And that's what led me to blogging. The New York Times, my stories on this ran before Twitter. It was 2004, and it was before you connected directly with audiences. You just reported in your notebook, told the story, got it published, and then you read it or didn't read it. And now there's this really engagement kind of approach, including to filmmaking. I think that's one of the merits of the film. It kind of reflects that you don't always know what you're going out for. And neat and clean can lead you astray. It can make you think the world is simple. Adrian, yeah, as a filmmaker too, how do you Do you see this shifting in any way, or is Hollywood still demanding Hollywood and or finance for documentaries? Are they still wanting neat and clean things?
I always liked it raw and real. I've been an indie guy for, a long, long time. So I'm never daunted when the budgets don't come through or it's not, neat and clean, because really story is deeper than the surface. And it's character for me. It's character driven, and it's also what's the heart. What's the transformative message? Is there commentary on the human condition, on our time here on this planet, or is it just fluff and escape? And for me, this film has all the depth that is a pass for me, and I don't know if it would have been the same had it been neat and polished.
And what do you want people to do with it? Films now can be campaigns. What's the goal here? There are obviously theaters, but there's also universities now show films and there's discussions around them. I think the pandemic actually led to a lot more of that. I don't know if that's good or bad when you think about the outcome you want with a film.
We're all connected. Did you know that? We're all
right now.
intertwined. We're all interconnected, and there are so many overlapping and entwined themes, not only within the film, but now in our current reality here, post-pandemic and pandemic even, because it's really about, we had a chance, all of us had a chance to feel what it's like to be the lonely whale, to be isolated like the lonely whale. And what I think COVID has asked us to do, which is what the lonely whale's been asking us to do, is to slow down and as Josh was saying, listen. Let's bring down the noise so we can start getting some real signal here. And what's the signal telling us? What is it? What are the lessons and the messages we're receiving? And it's about slowing down our lifestyle, really connecting with nature, listening to what nature has to say, so that we can begin to address some of these important climate issues and environmental issues and ocean issues. So I don't know, did we mention, we haven't mentioned yet, but when Josh asked me to produce the film, I had made many films before, and the call to action was always the afterthought. It was like, okay, now we have this film that's inspiring people, and now we've gotten them in the seats, and their hearts are open, or they're ready to take action. Where do they go? And we, usually just throw the name of the film.com and you tell people to go there, but you don't really have the infrastructure to really harness all of that energy and that motivation from the audience. So I said, look, I'd love to help produce the film, but let me, in tandem, create a nonprofit so that when the film comes out, there's somewhere for people to go to actually participate. So that's what we did. We founded lonelywhale.org, and now there's an actual organization, a nonprofit that's been running for 5 years. We've done incredible work on ocean plastic and a number of other things. We have an Ocean Heroes boot camp that's actually happening right now, where we bring 30 youngsters from around the world. 300 youngsters from 30 different countries around the world together on ocean issues. So right now we have a great opportunity to really drive people to action. And if you've seen the film and you're moved to do something, and you want to help reduce ocean noise pollution, or you want to connect more with nature, that's where to go, lonelywhale.org.
That's such a great model that you're talking about there, connecting people on a common cause. There was a fantastic example in 2009 I wrote about, called Atlantic Rising, where some young educators from England went around the Atlantic to communities, coastal communities, doing briefings and learnings with kids on sea level rise. And they were connecting using Skype classrooms in Nigeria and Nantucket and Scotland. And I just thought, oh God, it's so great. So this sounds very encouraging what you're talking about.
Well, our mission at Lonely Whale, the nonprofit, we take all our cues from the loneliest whale in the world. So like seriously, like we literally listen to what the lonely whale has to say, and so our mission is not to save the ocean. Our mission is to connect with one another and bond with the ocean, because when we connect with each other, we share ideas, we synthesize them, we push back on bad ones, and then we connect with nature, we make better choices for nature.
In a way, so just to close things out here, and I hope people can stay in touch with all of us through lonelywhale.org. And I'm easy to find anywhere to pursue these questions, at Revkin on Twitter. If you, maybe 10 years from now, what do you hope the situation is off that part of California and in the Pacific? You know, what's your vision of how this could play out? Maybe Josh, and then Adrian.
Well, actually, it's getting a bit encouraging. Yes, obviously, we're using a lot more shipping, and we have to understand that so much, 90% of everything we consume comes via shipping. However, we can basically use our consumerism to kind of educate and also adjust, nudge, if you will. So right now, what we're doing there's a bunch of different organizations, including Scripps, around the Channel Islands. They are basically incentivizing shipping companies to slow down. Basically, if you go 10 less knots, okay, in shipping, you basically are reducing your carbon footprint, you're reducing the amount of ship strikes, and you are reducing the ocean noise pollution. So that's one thing that's, for example, happening on the West Coast that we're seeing, and finding ways in which, and I think Adrian and the Lonely Whale Foundation really kind of help spearhead this, which is using our consumerism to kind of help protect the oceans. And, you know, the next goal is to basically get companies to only use ships that slow down. And then in doing that, you know, imagine if we could do that globally. Imagine if we could globally cut down the speed by 10 knots, what we can do. And so it's things like that that are enlightening and show a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, at least, you know, when it comes to that.
That's a perfect story hook for me to pursue that last one, because the data are there. You can actually demonstrably do that.
Yeah.
The global ship tracking. Thanks so much, Adrian Grenier and Josh Zeman, for reconnecting with me. It's been a few years since I've.
Thanks for writing the article.
And good luck with the film. And we can follow up with this down the line. So thank you again.
Would love
Everyone
to.
should go out and check out this film.
Thanks,
you guys. Andrew.
Thank you. And thanks to all our Kickstarter people for, honestly, you know, guys, I can't thank you enough for what you've done. And look what you've created. You've not just created a film, but the Lonely Whale Foundation, I think, is really making a huge difference out there. I think Adrian has done amazing work, and he's being modest in terms of really the impact that the Lonely Whale Foundation has had. Look, you know, you saw in the film this little scene where I talk about being on a ship and how that inspired the creation of this movie, and now he's educating young people. And so I you know, it just warms my heart that these dollars led to the film, led to the organization, and really led to a lot of wins out there in terms of ocean stewardship. And I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, you know, and I'd just like to say in closing, thank you, Josh, for making the film. I know how challenging making films can be. You know, and I was there with you. We had, you know, and
I had my own white whale.
I'm glad you persevered and you know, pushed through, because it's no small feat. And you know, I just want to say to everybody out there that, you know, we are in a loneliness pandemic. You know, there is an epidemic of loneliness in our culture, and there is nothing more lonely than extinction. And if we continue to live a lifestyle that ignores our natural world and the animals, and we just decide to get distracted by the noise of consumerism and mass consumption, that's going to happen. So let's be quiet for a moment, listen, hear what the world is saying, and speak from our hearts, and come together to create a world that's more in harmony with nature and the ocean, and maybe Lonely Whale will ultimately find his mate.
Thanks, everybody.
Beautiful.
Much appreciated. Well
Take care.
said.